Jai Mahamaya ki jai, Veshveshvari Mata ki jai. We'll go on with chapter 47 from the Devi Bhagavatam, retold by Ramesh, Menon. When he was alone, Harishchandra began to sigh like a serpent from a grief that would destroy him. In a while he began to cry, I am a preta now. If anyone wants to buy a preta for a slave, let him do it before nightfall. It is told that Dharmadeva, the god of righteousness, decided to test Harishchandra's honesty. He came down to the street where that king stood, trying to sell himself. The Deva came in the guise of a coal-black Chandala, his skin rough, his features coarse, his hair crinkly, his belly enormous, his teeth like fangs, his face hidden in a thick beard and stinking to high heavens. He held a bamboo staff in one hand. Around his neck hung a necklace of bones, and his chest was hollow and scarred. Altogether hideous, the Deva came to Harishchandra and said in a grating voice, I need a slave. Tell me, what price do you want for yourself? That Chandala looked so villainous, the king asked him, Who are you that wants to buy me? I am Pravira, the Chandala, and all the world knows me. When you are my slave, your task will be to steal the clothes from the corpse of the dead. Harishchandra said, I want to be bought by a Brahmana or a Kshatriya. I cannot observe my own dharma if I live in your house. You are low born, and your dharma is low as well. The Chandala said, Why did you say anyone can buy me? If you were so particular, you should have said that only a Brahmana or Kshatriya could buy you. Unless you are a liar and go back on what you said first, then I have bought you in dharma. I will pay the price you ask, and you shall be my slave from now. Harishchandra murmured, He who lives goes straight to hell. He who lies goes straight to hell. To become a Chandala is far better than that. At this was going on, Vishvamitra arrived there impatiently. He rolled his eyes and said, The Chandala is willing to pay the money you owe me. Why are you hesitating? Harishchandra moaned, Muni, you know who I am. The body of mine is born in the house of the sun. How can I sell it into slavery to a Chandala? Vishvamitra said between clenched teeth, Be sure of my curse if you don't. I don't care how you get the gold you owe me, but I must have it now. The sun is setting. Harishchandra, your time is almost up. If you don't pay me, I mean to burn you with fire from my eyes. Harishchandra fell at the rishi's feet and sobbed, My lord, I beg you, don't be so harsh. Please don't make me this Chandala's slave. My very soul will be lost. Vishvamitra, friend of the universe, take me for your own slave instead. I swear I will serve you humbly till there is life in this body of mine. Vishvamitra did not hesitate. Very well, be my slave from now. Harishchandra wept for joy as if his life had been saved. He cried, Tell me what you want me to do, Muni. I am your slave from now. Vishvamitra turned to the Chandala and said, Give me the gold for this slave of mine. I will sell him to you. The Chandala was delighted and cried, Devji, I will cover you in gold and jewels. And so he did. Vishvamitra left with the treasure the Chandala gave him, and a voice spoke out of heaven to Harishchandra, saying, The dakshina is paid. You are free from your oath now. But now the triumphant Chandala tied a rope around the king's throat and dragged him away. He struck him, kicked him frequently, and abused him often. Overwhelmed with grief as he was at losing his wife and son, Harishchandra fell unconscious on the road. When he awoke, he found himself in the Chandala's house in chains. That suffering king did not eat at all, but wept without pause for his queen and his prince. He imagined his wife longing for him, living in the hope that he would come with gold and buy her back from the Brahmana. He saw his son's face before his eyes, calling to him piteously. But what hope had Rohita of seeing his father again? His father was a vicious Chandala's slave. 4 days passed, and then the Chandala arrived in the room where Harishchandra languished, greeting the king with a sundry slap or two and a torrent of filthy abuse. He unfastened his chains, dragged him out into the open, and said, Yonder is the graveyard. Go and fetch me the clothes of the corpse that haven't been cremated but buried. The Chandala handed the king a a club, and sent him off to the cemetery, saying, "Tell anybody who asks who you are that you are Virabahu's slave, and that he gave you the club." The graveyard lay to the south of the city of Kashi. It stunk of rotting flesh and rotted garlands, and smoke issued over it from the 100 pyres. Jackal packs stalked that graveyard, and their dismal howling echoed all around. There were kites and vultures on the ground and on the air. Hyenas with yellow eyes slouched at the edges of the fields of death. At times, Harishchandra heard their maniacal laughter, and it seemed to him that some half-burnt corpse, its teeth exposed, were laughing at him. Besides the dreadful noises the scavengers made, a sea of crying could be heard, 100 relatives of the dead wailing for their lost husbands, wives, mothers, brothers, sisters, and friends. Flesh and fat, marrow and brain burned in the merry fires that various smells rose into the air. Harishchandra heard some quaint popping sounds that punctuated the rest of the noises of the dead. He wondered at these first, then realized it was the skulls of the dead, exploding softly as the flames drenched them. There was enough grief and horror in this cemetery to make a man believe that the universe was ending there. Harishchandra was overwhelmed, and squatting on the ground in misery, he began to sob again. "Ah, my ministers and generals, my servants and women, where are you all today when I need you the most? Where is my kingdom and my army, my great treasury and my golden throne, come down to me through the ages from Suryadeva himself?" Gradually the storm of grief passed, and he remembered the ghastly task for which the Chandala, his master, had sent him there. In anguish, the king began to gather the clothes from the dead. The days passed. He grew lean and pale as a corpse himself, working at the demeaning task under the pitiless sun. He was covered in a dust and ashes like the most wretched Chandala himself, and soon he knew exactly how many gold coins each corpse clothes would fetch. He wore a ragged cloth around his waist with a score of patches, and his feet were smeared with burnt flesh and blood and marrow. He tied the garlands of dead around his head and ate the food that was set out for them as sacrifice for their last journey. He hardly slept, and a year went by like 100. Meanwhile, his son Rohita made some friends, and one day, when he went out with them to play near the city of Kashi, he saw some kusa grass and began to pull it up. His companions asked why he was doing that. He said, "My master is a Brahmana, and he can use this for his worship." And then the boy began to gather palasa branches as well. He made a bundle of these, and placing it on his head, set out for home. That bundle was heavier than he could manage easily, and he felt thirsty. He saw a pool of water and went to drink from it. He set the bundle of branches down on what looked like an old hardened anthill. In fact, it was a snake pit, and Vishvamitra had created it, which he had created with his Maya. When he had quenched his thirst at the pool, Rohita came to fetch the bundle of darba grass and wood. When out darted a king cobra from it and stung his hand. The boy fell down with a cry, turned blue in a moment, and died. His friends who saw this ran to the Brahmana's house and called Savya, who was now a maidservant there. They cried to her, "Come quickly, your son has died of a snake bite." She fell like a plantain tree cut down with a sword. The Brahmana arrived there and threw some water in her face. When she sat up, she began to wail loudly. He gave her a slap and cried harshly, "Why are you crying, you wretch? Don't you know it brings misfortune to a home like this in the evening? The Devi Lakshmi will be angry, and she will curse me and leave my home." But the queen only rolled in the dust again and wept. Soon her face was covered with dirt, and her hair was loose and disheveled. But she wailed on. The Brahmana rounded on her again and shouted, "Wretch woman, I paid so much gold for you, and now you bring misfortune to my home. Why did you take my money if you didn't want to work for me?" and he gave her a kick or two. Then she managed to sob, "Brahmana, a snake has bitten my son, and he is dead. I beg you, let me go and see my child one last time, for I will never see him again." "Oh, Rakshasi, don't you know that she who takes money for her keep and then does no work goes to the hell?" Being a Brahmana, he knew the details of the punishment for such a heinous crime. "After a short stay in that hell, you will be born as a cockerel. But that use is it in telling me, a cheat and an ingrate, all this is like sowing seeds in the desert. I say to you, stop wailing, woman, if you have care for your soul. Come in at once and do your work." But she cried, "I beg you, master, let me go and see my son for just a moment. Let me touch his face one last time." She laid her head at his feet and bathed them in tears, but the Brahman said, "Oh, what use will it be to me if you go to see your son? You have forgotten my temper, woman. Do you want to feel my whip on your back again?" He had whipped her once, and she had fainted from the pain. In terror, the queen went into the house and began to do her work while she wept often. Night fell. She gave the Brahmana warm water for his bath, then his food, and then she pressed his feet until half the night was over. As he began to feel sleepy, the Brahmana said, "You can go now and cremate your son. Be sure to be back early in the morning." With a cry of joy, she ran from the house all the way to Kashi in the direction the children had told her. The risen moon bathed the world in a silvery ghost light. She saw her child lying dead like a beggar's boy, lying on fallen leaves, and his bundle of cousgrass lying near him. The queen fell across the child's body and began to sob. "Ah, why have you left me, my Rohita? How will I live now? As long as I heard your voice calling me, I could stand every misfortune fate brought. But now, how will I live? Ah, Harishchandra, where are you now? Don't you see your precious Rohita lying dead upon the earth? Come and look at him, my lord. Ah, come and see our son." And she fainted. When she opened her eyes again, she saw the child and lay motionless. She said softly, "Rohita, my son, the hour is late. It is time for us to go home to sleep. Come up. It is almost time for the dew to fall. Ah, it is the hour of yakshas and bhutas, Rohita. Can't you hear the jackals crying? Please come, my child. Get up. You can sleep at home now." She spoke in her sleep, and when he did not reply, she began to shake him and cry, "Why don't you answer me? We are slaves now. Even your great father has sold himself to pay the Muni's dakshina. When the astrologers cast your horoscope at your birth, they told me all the wonderful things that would happen to my prince. They were liars. They never told me this. They said you would be a mighty kshatriya, a king, a devout man, and they said you would have a long life. You had all the auspicious signs. What have they all come to today? That you lie in the dust like a beggar's boy. Your face is caked in mud, and the fly swarms are asleep on it, waiting for your sweat face to purify them, so they begin their feast. O son of Rohita," she screamed over and over. The wardens of the city heard her cries, and they came to where she lay, racked across her dead child. The warden asked, "Who are you, woman? Whose child is this? Where's your husband? How are you here in this hour? Aren't you afraid?" But she only sobbed dementedly in reply. Then the guards grew afraid themselves, and their hair stood on end. They walked a short distance from the queen, and one of them whispered, "She isn't speaking. She must be a Rakshasa out here at this hour. I've heard her kind. They are vampires. They drink the blood of children. She brought the child here to devour him." They laid hold of the queen and dragged her to the Chandala's house. They raised him from his sleep and said, "We have brought you a child-eating Rakshasa. Take her to the slaughterhouse and have her killed." The Chandala held up a torch and peered closely at the queen. Rolling his eyes, he said, "I know this Rakshasa. She has killed hundreds of children. We've been looking for her for years. Go back to your homes now. I will deal with her, this demoness." The Chandala seized the queen by her hair and began to whip her with a length of rope. He woke his slave Harishchandra and ordered him, "Kill this woman, she is a murderess." But though Harishchandra did not recognize his wife, he shuddered at the thought of killing a woman. "Master, let me do anything else, but I cannot kill a woman." But the Chandala growled, "You will find not sin, but a great blessing for yourself if you kill this monster. She eats the flesh of small children." But the child said, "Women are meant to be cared for, never killed. Any man who kills a woman burns in hell for a very long time." "Quiet, slave. When you kill a fiend like this, you have the blessing of the whole world. Here, take this axe and hew off her head. All Kashi will bless you." "Master, I swore in my childhood never to kill a woman." Villain, no oath is greater than your master's command. If you don't do as I say, you will find yourself in hell anyways. Harishchandra begged him, "Give me any other task, master. Have you an enemy you want murdered? I am the man for that. Why, if Indra and his devas came to fight you, I would face them all for your sake, master. But I beg you, don't ask me to kill a woman." "How dare you?" cried his master. "You are the slave of a lowly Chandala, and you speak of devas and gods. If you were so proud, why did you sell yourself to be a slave of a Chandala? Not a word more. Take this axe and off with her head." Meanwhile, neither the king or the queen recognized one another. They had both been transformed so much in a year. Harishchandra looked every bit the Chandala slave who stole the clothes from the corpse and the burning ghat, and the queen like a Rakshasi, indeed, with her hair all wild and her face caked in ashes and dirt. So said Vedavyasa to King Janamejaya. Jai Mahamaya ki jai, Vishveshwari Mata ki jai, Bole Baba ki jai.